Hello, my name is Ikra, and I'm working for InQuire, and I'll be interviewing Anna Firth after University of Kent General Elections Hustings. So Anna, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Just had a great hustings. I think it was probably the best one.
That's really good. That's really good. So my first question for you is, keeping in mind the rumours surrounding the privatisation of the NHS by Boris Johnson, how do you intend for Canterbury, Whitstable and its surrounding villages to have a new full-function hospital, as you've stated in your manifesto, if privatisation makes hospital costs rise?
Well, first of all, there is no evidence whatsoever that Boris Johnson is going to privatise the NHS. The document which was disclosed the other day, 471 pages, only mentions the NHS 4 times. So I do not think there's any truth in the rumour, and it is just a rumour, that Boris Johnson would privatise the NHS. And he has publicly said, we have run the NHS now for 44 out of the 71 years of its existence. If we were going to privatise it, that would have happened by now. So there's no way a Conservative government will privatise the NHS. We think that the NHS is one of our national treasures. It should always be free at the point of delivery. You asked me about the Kent and Canterbury Hospital. That is my number one campaign, and I've been campaigning for a new hospital almost ever since I was, even before I was selected here actually, because we've been campaigning as Conservatives here for that hospital now for a number of years. And the reason being is quite simple. The hospital is past its sell-by date. The buildings are in the bottom 25 in Kent, and they are soon to fall into the bottom 10 in Kent. So this is nothing to do with Tory cuts. This is to do with East Kent getting a worse deal than anywhere else in the country. And that's why I'm campaigning so hard on it, and that's why I have got the Secretary of State to come and look at the hospital. He's seen it, he's met the staff and nurses who are fantastic, and he now appreciates we have to have investment in the Kent and Canterbury. And he has said on camera to the newspaper that if we are returned with a Conservative majority, so if I'm elected here in Canterbury, we will get that investment in the Kent and Canterbury Hospital.
Okay, that's great to know. So my second question is, you claim that you want to get Brexit done as well in the manifesto. So how do you propose on planning on doing that when the past 3 prime ministers have failed to deliver?
So the Brexit deal that Boris Johnson has come up with, the deal that everybody said he wouldn't be able to do, but he did, and in 90 days, has passed through Parliament. But all parties have come together, and that has now passed its second reading. What needs to happen is for the timing of it to be agreed, and that was the bit that other parties blocked. So if we get a Conservative majority next Thursday, or the early hours of Friday morning, the legislation will be passed through Parliament before Christmas, and the UK will leave the European Union on the 31st of January 2020.
Okay, that's great. But what's, according to previous promises that have also been made by the Conservative government about October 31st, I myself personally wrote an article that was supposed to leave on October 31st, but that never happened. So how are we ensured that January 31st, 2020 will also be leaving?
So it's a good question, and it's about process. And every single candidate who's standing for the Conservative Party in this election has agreed to back the Prime Minister. So if we get a majority of Conservative MPs, they've all agreed they will back the Prime Minister, and we will get that legislation passed before Christmas, and that legislation will set the timetable for us leaving on the 31st of January. So that's why it didn't happen before, because we didn't have a majority in Parliament. So Parliament was able to block it, and that was due to problems in the Conservative Party and other parties. That's why it's so important that we get a Conservative majority government next week to move the country forward again.
That's great. Okay, so in your campaign video on Twitter, you mentioned that our universities are thriving. So what part of your priorities for Canterbury and Whitstable affect the student population in these universities?
Okay, so I think that the universities are a fantastic feather in Canterbury's cap. And the first thing I want to see happen is for the new medical school to open next year. That's happened under a Conservative government. It's one of only 5 in the country, and that is going to provide a huge number of extra places for students to train right here in Canterbury to become doctors. And I think that is hugely exciting, and that's one of the reasons why I'm campaigning so hard to get a brand new hospital. Because if we're training the doctors in the university, we've got to have the hospital for them to go and do their clinical years. So that's the first thing. And as I've already as I said in the hustings, I'm really pleased that the Conservative manifesto commits to looking at the interest rate that students are paying on the debt, because it's currently over 6%, and I would like to see it cut to more like 2 or 3%. So that's another thing that the Conservatives are going to look at. But the big thing is, if we have a strong growing economy, we can afford things like a new medical school and a new hospital, and then we can provide better jobs for everybody, and then we can provide a new fixed rate mortgage where you only need a 5% deposit to let people like you get on the housing ladder.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
That's
you.
all I had for today.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
no worries.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, first time.